Okay.
Konnichiwa, konbanwa, Kyushu kara gozaimasu. Hello, good evening, and good morning from the island of Kyushu, Japan, and the land of the rising sun. My name is Joe Pan. I'll be your cook this evening, and I'm joined by Ann Lee, a professor, retired college professor, and a community member at the Daily Kos. She's a member of the National Council of Independent Scholars and is a contributor to the book, The Political Economy of Art, Making the Nation of Culture. Hey there, Ann. Oh,
Hi, I'm
you gotta
doing
kill your
board work
share.
here, trying to get this all to read.
So
I'm
multitasking.
multitasking. That's just not working. God,
Oh,
gosh darn it.
ki- kill the share, kill the share.
Kill the share. Wait a second. Okay.
Oh, not him. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Jeebus Christ. What the hell, man?
Ah, goodness.
Oh, that. Forgive me. I'm multitasking here. Not very well.
Oh, I'm not doing much better. My
Straight from
knees are
Nippon, though. Nippon.
indeed with some special ingredients that I have not had in many a year, specifically burdock root. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with burdock. Let me get my information on it here. Um, it's scientifically known as Arctium lapa. It's a biennial plant native to northern Asia and Europe, but it's now widely found in North America. It's quite popular in the macrobiotic world of the vegetarian sector of the diet industry. Uh, it's Japanese. It goes by the Japanese name gobo, and I'd like to apologize for upsetting John, our resident vegan. Uh, we we, uh, we mentioned something about the brutal end to baby octopus, and it, it had me thinking his reaction and anger and frustration at people's inability to change their diets radically. Um, got me thinking to when I became vegan a long, long time ago. Um, I wasn't reading Mao's Little Red Book. I came across George Ozawa's The Macrobiotic Way, which was a little black book. I think it had a red dot, maybe. And it was this manifesto of clean eating, a traditional Japanese diet, going back to the basics. And they had one specific diet, like the hardcore diet, was basically the 1 week brown rice, eating only brown rice for 1 week, nothing else, no salt, nothing, just a cup of rice 3 times a day. And the idea is that by the end of the week, your blood has changed significantly enough and your taste has altered that you can then slowly reintroduce foods. One of the first foods that I reintroduced was kinpura, which is a uh, root vegetable, sautéed root vegetable dish. It's, I don't know if it's the most popular, it's one of the most popular side dishes in Japan. And it's basically burdock root, carrot, and maybe potato. And you julienne or cut these into matchsticks, saute them in sesame oil, uh, and then season them with uh, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce and a tablespoon of mirin. And then you
Hmm.
can toast some sesame seeds and grind them with toast sesame seeds with salt for a little romacio. And you can garnish with that or a little scallion and just a simple dish. So it takes the root is very hard. It's similar to salsify. If anybody's familiar with that, that's quite popular in Germany, I know.
Hmm.
Um, so this is going to take about 20 minutes to cook. Um, One interesting thing in Japan I noticed is that it's off the chain with the plastic around food products. Uh, Almost probably as bad, maybe worse than Scandinavia. Um, but the other thing are the whether you get clean or washed or fresh from the farm vegetables. And I actually had to pay more for dirty burdock.
Dirty bird, dirty burdock.
I-
Yeah,
I'm not sure what the economic principle or incentive there is.
that
How
is
could it,
weird.
how could a clean vegetable be cheaper than a dirty one? I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Anyways, I'm staying in a traditional Japanese house that's somewhat of a hostel, and thus it has very dull knives. And I awoke in the middle of the night to find a rusted out wok, so I had to quickly season it. I hope I got pretty much got everything off there, so we hope we'll do fine.
Looks
And
good.
we've got interesting gas stove here. Has this mechanism here, which which is a safety. It engages the pot. This is a sensor. So when this gets to, I was trying to season it, couldn't season it properly because I couldn't get it up to a high
Hot
enough
enough.
heat
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because this sensor would turn off once it got to a certain temperature. So you can't do really high cooking inside. Um,
Oh, burn
I've
the
never,
place down. Those
yeah,
paper walls.
yeah. So it's a pretty cool invention. Never seen that before. So I shall commence to scrubbing these and then turning those into matchsticks, and that's that. But I was wondering, is this Happy Martial Law Eve weekend?
We're not even there
I,
yet. It's
apparently Trump's poised on April 20th to announce the Department of Justice's findings on whether to invoke the Insurrection Act to address the alleged national emergency at the country's southern border.
well,
Is
yes,
that
that's true. It's on the schedule, but I mean, I think what he needs is some sort of event, and I'd be aware of some sort of cataclysmic event of some kind to try to impel public opinion to support the idea of insurrection, of the
Hmm.
Insurrection Act. I don't think that's going to happen. It would be
Okay.
interesting, and then I'd be afraid of false flags and the usual. It's pretty clear that the current issue with El Salvador is one way of escalating that, certainly.
Mhm.
Keeping Kilmar Garcia behind bars in El Salvador is part of that story, though. So while you're working on that, maybe I'll talk about my current rant or whatever.
Uh, Sounds good.
Or do you have more to?
No, that's it.
All
I'll
right.
just scrub these little suckers.
Well, just let me lead on
Oh,
and
just one thing. I forgot to talk about the taste of the burdock.
oh,
Oh,
okay.
um, it is truly one of my most favorite root vegetables. It has an earthiness that can only be described as like tasting like dirt, very good dirt. So it has that earthiness of beets, but dirtier than beets,
Mhm.
and kind of like if you could eat tree branches, it probably tastes like with various types of trees.
Gosh,
I might not be selling it very well, but it has
no.
such a fantastic taste.
Well, I think in conjunction with other things, it does provide fiber.
Mm,
Let's put it that way.
mm. And
Um,
we can talk about the healing properties another time.
oh, well, yes, there's that, of course. It's been a busy week, and I put up something today on apparently Chris Van Hollen, the senator from Maryland, got to actually meet with Kilmar Garcia and in San Salvador, and apparently the squeaky wheel does do things. There was a very singular news conference that you had a sort of an almost empty space with Van Hollen talking in the center of the screen, standing up and talking about his progress so far. And I think that actually had an effect on, if nothing else, it got the local consul to actually leverage the President Bukele to allow Garcia to meet with Chris Van Hollen. So there's a picture of Van Hollen and Garcia sitting at a table speaking with one another, and the message was that Van Hollen was going to come back to Maryland and give his transport a message of love from the husband Garcia to his U.S. born wife. Um, the reality, of course, is that on X or Twitter, the president of El Salvador decided that he would troll this particular meeting by saying that they were drinking margaritas. There weren't margaritas. It may have been that there were glasses with cherries and a salted rim, but it had no margarita contained in it. It looked just like another glass of water, and it was mine as well as some other folks' suppositions, including mainstream media, that that was all Photoshop. So it was interesting to see that. But to have a president of a country troll, these kinds of events is not very well. I suppose it fits in with his self-described moniker as the world's coolest dictator. Now, whether Bukele is the world's coolest dictator, I don't know. I actually don't know what a cool dictator would be. With all due respect, I don't. None of them are very cool, apparently, because obviously dictators do not so nice things. So
Mm.
that happened, um, and then the Trump White House decided to troll this also by tweeting a headline, a New York Times headline, and correcting it by saying, he's never coming back." Now, you know, what do you have? What opinion can you have of a government that sends out official messages saying, trolling essentially this kind of event by saying, well, you're never getting back, et cetera. And that was sort of weird too. So anyway, I put something up on that. A little disturbing, but Joyce Vance of MSNBC, among other places, uh, decided that she would comment on this and say, well, the White House commenting on this is certainly going to play in with the question of contempt of Congress or contempt of the courts in terms of the unanimous decision of the Fourth Circuit uh, to trump on any attempt by uh, the White House to stonewall trying to get back Garcia. He's still not back. Let's just put it that way. Garcia is not coming back with Van Hollen, apparently. At least that's the current state of it. And our government clearly is not acting in the best interests of its citizens, even if at the state level, a standing U.S. senator is down there trying to do that. And, it's not exactly Jonestown, but it's pretty clear that uh, the executive branch can have its head of Homeland Security do a photo op with her and uh, a an automatic weapon in front of prisoners stacked up, much like concentration camp prisoners from World War II, and that's you can have those kinds of photo ops, but not get someone who is clearly snatched off the darn streets and sent out of the country simply for these public relations reasons. These are all public relations, as I tried to point out. Um, it's not exactly government acting like a government, or at least what we expect to have. But yes, it's continuing though. People are being snatched off the streets. Someone reported today on Blue Sky that ICE agents had gotten on a train in Montana. Um, Having actually commuted near the border a couple of times, it wasn't uncommon to have Customs and Border Patrol agents come on to Amtrak to look for people trying to transit the country. So it's unfortunate, but it's a 100-mile limit, all the way around the U.S. border. The Customs and Border Patrol people can, intervene in your daily life, and that includes, of course, ICE agents as a function of that. So it's a little disturbing, and but all the mechanisms have always been there, with all due respect, to repress the population. So it's just that some people have decided to press the button, and here we are rolling on to some kind of non-democratic activity. So that's what's going on. The first billboard for calling for Trump's impeachment just went up in New Mexico. Um, Stuff's going on. And there's more demonstrations on Saturday. The country is being a little agitated, needless to say. Big crowds with Bernie and AOC. Um, Stuff's happening, and so people should be aware of that. One group among many is Indivisible, organizing to do these demonstrations. We're only at the beginning of national demonstrations, and
Mhm.
even though we're far, far away from the 2026 election, but I think stuff's going on, and people need to be aware of that. Despite the fact that there's all this foolishness, we're not even 100 days in. I think we're 87 days in, and stuff's happening. I hope that people will continue the sense of awareness about that. So for me, that was the biggest issue today: was heads of governments acting like fools. Um, Needless to say, Senator Van Hollen at least managed to get attention from all other folks. A happy Earth Day for folks as well that's coming. It it is troubling that the White House attempted to uh, sort of offset this Garcia kidnapping by having the mother of the woman who was killed, Laken Riley in Georgia, the one who was killed by a Venezuelan migrant, uh, and it they were trying to offset that because they had tried to make Laken Riley the poster child of the entire effort to uh, deport immigrants. documented or otherwise, since people have been imprisoned or are imprisoned now who are American citizens for X number of insane reasons and taken out of state and not being released. Needless to say, this has been going on for a while. You'll recall that about a month or so ago, Canadians were released, having been held for up to 10 days. And then, of course, there's a couple of people from Germany who have been released after 30 days of imprisonment. Now, there are extenuating circumstances in every case, but you could say that this is just a sort of standard operating procedure, and we shouldn't accept this as the norm. But it is pretty clear that this is repression is here, and it is not fully institutionalized, but it is becoming, ubiquitous. It's coming everywhere and in weird places. And some people will try and do it simply because they think they can get away with it. And it is, incumbent on everyone to be just much more aware and to be careful when people are being repressed for, scam reasons. This is just, there have been a couple of events where people just make up stories and attempt to just screw with people. And it is tense. Let's just put it that way. And then, of course, we had another institutional shooting, a university shooting yesterday, where the stepson of a deputy sheriff, I guess, decided to take stepmom's gun and shoot up a classroom. I guess that's what he did. Ultimately, at the end, two people died, and six people or so were wounded. Needless to say, the quote unquote institution, the Florida State University, was locked down. So there was a lot of that. And of course, I identified the shooter, and surprise, surprise, he's a white supremacist of some kind. And
Get out of here. You gotta be kidding.
it's just he's a white guy who is a white supremacist. Those two are the predominant stereotype, but gee whiz.
Just
But I'm
one
sure
thing
it
on
wasn't
that
about
ice.
ideology.
Uh, uh, well, one thing on that ice thing. This is, I have to admit, the most out there travel marketing campaign I've ever seen. I've seen numbers for at least Europeans' desire to travel to the U.S. have plummeted. So,
Well, the Florida issue, recall going all the way back to, I don't know, this is several decades ago, where Floridians who made the wrong turn after getting out of the airport in their rental car were carjacked. Um,
yeah,
that issue has been there for a while. Uh, and of course, it's terrifying because if you're a tourist, and Joe knows
wait.
this, it's pretty stressful when you're just, you're plopped into a new country and you sort of assume one thing and it happens to be the opposite that occurs. Um, no, this is nothing new. I mean, with all due respect, this happens all the time, but now it's pretty clear. All the data shows that nobody wants to come to the United States, and of course, this is going to not help the coming recession. I mean, it's pretty clear that consumption will be down. Prices are still up. Trump this couple of days ago said, "Nothing to see here. Prices are fine. Prices are going down, and there's no inflation." And it's a complete lie. Every word was a lie. It was just the strangest little posting. It denied that anything was happening, that the tariffs were bringing in revenue, and they weren't. And in fact, there was another article that said uh, the government is actually not collecting the tariffs. So all of this hoopla about tariffs, and it's just incompetence everywhere. It's just amazing that at ports of entry the tariff revenue is not coming in. And part of it, of course, is that they're just incompetent, but also because it's a large bureaucratic system. The supply chain is a mess. It was a mess before, but now it's just a much bigger mess. And at 245% or whatever it is, tariffs on China, and I think the Chinese are just sort of chuckling because they know that Trump is eventually going to have to pull it back because you're going to get pressure from certain types of companies that are going to say, it's not just chips and other consumer electronics, which Trump lifted the tariff on because some people looked at the possibility of spending 3 or 4 times the amount for uh, an iPhone, and I think some people have flinched finally. you know, it's
but
just
if he's allowing the tariffs to not apply to tech goods, um,
yes.
how are we going to get the manufacturing of tech goods back to the state if they don't have those tariffs then?
Well,
Right?
yeah,
The
that's
whole
the whole thing.
uh,
It, it's just simple minds and bilateral tariffs. That's kind of what it is the whole
mhm,
problem of trying to institute a bilateral tariff when it's not bilateral. I mean, it's just
mhm,
trade is not bilateral, and anything that when you try to do these things, there are temporary activities that yes are profitable for certain people in the middle, but ultimately, consumer gets screwed, and that's
mhm,
kind of the thing. James has reminded me in the chat about the Secretary of Commerce talking about we need Americans to screw in the little screws where they put the little screws in the. It's pretty much the quote. It was just like the weirdest thing. Oh yeah, that's right. That's where all the assembly lines really are for computers. And during a certain period, yes, it was true that you would be the person to put the little screws in the Apple computer, but that's a long time ago, dude.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
Trump is, I haven't talked about Ukraine yet, but
Oh,
there's
be-
just that's another story. Well, Joe,
before you get to that, I'm cooking the burdock by itself since it's about 10 times harder and drier than carrot. So it takes a bit more to get cooked. So
should
we're gonna
might they have
do
been
water
blanched
saute.
ahead? Oh yes, there
Yeah,
we go.
so
There we
that'll
go.
quicken up the cooking time there.
There we go. There we go.
I was thinking,
Yum.
uh,
I'm hungry again. Darn it.
mm, yeah.
How's the food shopping? Did you manage to get a decent food shopping in?
Oh yeah, we got a grocery store down the street. I was
Excellent.
cycling down there on a rickety old bike. Um, it's a we're in a suburban kind of area, low level housing. It's quite nice. Japan is a lot different than Korea due
Mm.
to the earthquake situation. So they don't have all of the skyscrapers that you see across Korea. Even in, you're on the train and you're passing villages, and then there's these villages, suddenly a forest of skyscrapers. Don't see that.
Well,
Maybe in other parts of Japan, but
oh
not
yes,
here.
definitely other parts of Japan, but yes, that is an issue. Um,
Mhm. So they
and
have lower level built, squatter, wider and shorter.
indeed. Well, it is
Mhm.
the Ring of Fire, whatever, of the
Yes.
Pacific, of the Indo-Pacific.
So to
Uh,
make gomasio, you toast salt, which I don't do in here because we've already going to season the dish. But gomasio, if you have a suribachi,
mhm.
it's the mixing bowl that has etchings in it. You use it to mix your miso paste into soup, or make gomasio. The ridges in the pottery will easily grind. It's like a mortar and pestle, but a bowl with etchings. and it'll grind the seeds to your desired consistency. But we don't have that, so we'll just use the bottom of a
There we go.
dish cup. So you're releasing the oils and flavor and the seediness. So that's about good.
Yum.
We've still got the wars raging, huh?
Oh, yes, war continues. Well, just in your neck of the woods, there was a border violation around Matsu, uh, uh, in just off of China. It's the usual thing where China is violating Japan's borders, et cetera, and we're pretty
Mm.
much back doing what was happening just after the Korean War. So tension is where you are, but obviously you haven't seen much of it, and that's good. Yet not to see the Japanese Defense Force out there messing about with against the Chinese People's Liberation Army Air Force. But anyway, otherwise, yes, plenty of war.
Uh,
Ukraine, more people are dying
we,
on each side.
I was just gonna say, being in our hostile situation, hostile with an EL, not a ILE.
Hostile.
Uh, we met a young Korean
Mm.
man traveling, 20-year-old. He's just finishing up his high school studies. He was studying international relations, international politics. So we were discussing the recent not referendum, but the impeachment that was upheld, and
Oh, yes.
trying to get a
Yoon.
handle on the
Yes.
pot. Yeah. So,
Yeah. But Korea is like that. I mean, martial law is a kind of regular deal, which it's sort of unfortunate, but they've declarations of martial law have not de rigueur, but they happen a lot more often than in other places.
is that due to the similar duopoly that we have in the States? He was mentioning
Uh,
that this was more to do with the
Party
judicial
politics,
system.
yes,
Yeah.
and the judicial
Mm,
system, yeah. It just there this differences in power, and the corporate system is different as well. You could say that there's more. It's a big cartel or a monopoly or family businesses or however you want to describe. I can't remember the technical the Korean name for it, but
mm,
it is like this massive oligopoly, and
mm,
that affects politics in Korea as well. Um, and of course, I mean they've industrialized very fast, so it is
mm,
still the Wild West, and they consume more iron ore, I guess, than I think it maybe even the People's Republic. It's because they're building all kinds of stuff. They're a place if you want a ship built, that's where it's going to happen. Um, so that kind of industrialization has driven South Korea forward, and unfortunately, the politics come along with it.
mm,
Um, that's where the tankers that are carrying all this uh, shady oil is moving around the world. That's kind of what's happening. I'm just lucky there's not more oil spills. But anyway, yeah, it
mm,
there's apparently the North Koreans are supplying a much more significant than we had realized amount of ammunition, artillery ammunition. Well, probably both types of ammunition, small arms ammunition to the Russians. On the Ukrainian side, there's just more transfers of materials. There are several underlying discussions going around. One model for the post-war situation will be that everything west of the Dnieper will be covered by EU troops. I mean, NATO troops essentially, but it won't be a NATO, operation. It'll just simply there'll be French and British and whatever, coalition of the willing, and then everything east of the Dnieper is still contestable, and whereupon this is a plan. This has not been obviously agreed to, but that's kind of the way it's going to look because the folks in the EU or NATO want to make sure they're going to defend Ukraine, and the probably it is the best way to do that. That is to put a significant military force to offset the fact that Ukraine, it has a big army, but it's not the biggest army in the world, and it has taken a lot of casualties, but not as many as the Russians. And the Russians really are in sort of a bad shape. They're still talking about that. They're approaching certain limits on supply on material. Um, it's hard to estimate that. I mean, every day I put up data to try and see where that's going, but it's really unclear since World War II, the Russians have a lot of stocks they've saved lots of stuff. They hoard lots of stuff. And so even if they're using, 40-year-old tanks, the darn things still shoot. So, whatever. That's not what's being blown up in these assaults, but they are um, making assaulting the Ukrainians with sparing materials. They're not sending tanks out so much as they're sending out a lot of people on motorcycles and other kinds of other things that they're kind of being sparing about. And so that's happening. Aside from the usual discussions about, where are the North Koreans? Why are there Chinese among the Russian troops? Um, all kinds of other little things are going on. And they're trying stuff that generally is not working, and they're making yet the Russians are making little incremental moves, but it's nothing major has happened yet, fortunately. But ultimately, the settlement would be, NATO troops west of the Dnieper. East of the Dnieper would be the top part of Ukraine would still be held by Ukraine, and then the bottom four oblasts would still be, essentially it would be what Putin wants is he wants the four southern oblasts of including Crimea um, of Ukraine, and it's unfortunate, but unless the Ukrainians actually put together an offensive that will supersede the current Russian offensive, there is a current Russian offensive. It is moving from the east, somewhere in the middle, in a place that they haven't been coming through before, but they're trying to do it, and it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. So it's hard to even say that it is an offensive, but some people claim that that's what it is. So that's what it is. And then there's other desperate stories. Russians using chemical weapons, putting nerve agents onto the drones, so that if you pick it up, you're going to get infected or something. Hurt. So that's other crazy stories are happening. There's a lot of that. Not a lot coming out, and of course there's the usual thing. The Russians repatriated a whole bunch, and I can't remember how much it is. It's 500 or something remains of Ukrainian soldiers, and there's all kinds of the little exchanges going on underneath that. And the Russian economy is still it's not collapsed yet. I think it's in trouble. I think there's been other kind of deals being played at, and it's just almost impossible to describe the negotiations going on because it's happening at several different levels, telling us all kinds of mistruths and disinformation, ceasefire violation. I mean, there supposedly is a ceasefire, but there is no ceasefire. It's being violated every day, so there really isn't one. So this is all disinformation, a tremendous amount of disinformation, and particularly from the Russian side, they're standing firm. They just want
Hmm.
Ukraine to give up, and they're not going to do that. They're just not going to do that. And yet, of course, on the U.S. side, it seems because the United States, not me, I didn't vote for it, but the United States has essentially given up or has surrendered to the point of view of the Russians. That is, if we have a ceasefire, it will be to give up the four oblasts. Um, so it is what it was at the beginning, that to freeze the war in one place and to stop fighting. We're not even at the stop fighting, so that's kind of the war. I mean, there's a ceasefire over the Black Sea, but that hasn't stopped the Russians from launching missiles towards Odessa or whatever from the Black Sea. And what it's going to take, of course, is for some enterprising Ukrainians to sink one of those missile launching boats, which could conceivably happen soon. Anyway, that's the world as we know it. there's still there's still terrible things going on in Gaza. It's just
Yeah.
it, it to just it is just horrible. I mean, people continue to be hurt and killed, and so many violations. I mean, it's just there's going to be a tribunal of some kind at the end of this to show the brutality and just the viciousness that's occurred. It's just horrible. I mean, it is historic now. I mean, it's not like one of those little small skirmish things that you can sort of see in a minor history. It is now, it's just major. And the fact that the U.S. is sort of in on it is just the worst thing possible. Fortunately, on the U.S. side, people are protesting. I mean, to have a guy go into, he lives in Vermont, although he does stuff at Columbia, to go in for his citizenship hearing, and then ICE walks in and suddenly decides they're going to arrest him. And there's no reason to arrest him. Absolutely no reason, but they did. And fortunately, there's enough people around in his community to say, you can't do that without, some accountability. So there's all kinds of people protesting that. Um, it's just an awful thing.
Let
That's
me
been our
interject
week.
here. Uh, let's change the pace here. We have cooked these things for quite a while now, and it's been 15 minutes. Still probably needs 4 or 5 more minutes longer. They're quite durable little root vegetables, the burdock. So I'm seasoning with soy sauce and a little mirin, which is kind of rice wine with sugar
Mm.
syrup that gives it a little sweet edge. Almost finished. Well, that's finishing up. There was one other topic I wasn't sure if you touched on. Notes here. In Wired magazine, they had an article about the judge blocking Doge from laying off 90% of the CFPB. Trump administration and Doge tried to cut more than 1,400 employees at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. An employee union and other groups are fighting to keep the regulator intact.
That's really problematic considering that he put in a CF a head of that agency who definitely wants to kill the agency. So it's just like
Mm.
it's just endless like that. It's all lawfare. I mean, it is that kind of thing, to put in people whose sole job is to destroy their job. Pretty nihilistic, I would propose. That's kind of what's happening. Literally, they're just ignoring the law. I mean, in Florida, ICE grabbed onto a U.S. citizen who had all of their papers in order. They had a birth certificate, a whole bunch of other things, and they just ignored that. And so, for anyone who worries about their papers, stuff's happening. It just crazy stuff is happening. People who will simply ignore the law and do illegal things. And that's how martial law is supposed to work. But you see, they're the ones who've created the emergency. The only emergency is one that has been manufactured by the government. It is nothing that there's no actual emergency. It is simply one that is it's like a police riot. Uh, you know, the police riots. You know, very often they're the source of
They're the
violence.
ones.
I mean, if you want to talk about violence in public demonstrations, it's usually the police who start the violence. Um,
They're the instigators. Just out of
uh,
curiosity, who makes up the foot soldiers of ICE, these people actually breaking
Well,
into people's homes, busting windshields and the cars and
well, they have
hauling
a
people away.
well,
Ex-military.
there's an enforcement division, an investigative division. There's an investigative division that is essentially the cops. Well, it is their own police agency that does, investigation. They have detectives and blah blah blah. But it also means that they have tactical units, and that are augmented, I think, by Customs and Border Patrol. So there's this kind of integrated secret police. Ultimately, it's the secret police.
Mm.
you know, I mean, they
Coming
have
to
all your,
arrest me.
well, they're glomming onto all your information. So they're finding people by using tax information. It's just, I mean, this is how you do it if you're going to be a, fascist state. It's no different than, either the East Germany's Stasi, where 12 or 20% of the population are, you know, informants of one kind or another. So it's that. It is the Cold War, except on the other people. It's what we were afraid of during the Cold War. That it's come here, and yet it's of our own making, and so that's a kind of what we have. Uh,
Were they actually hauling away people,
yes, they are.
spiriting them
I mean,
away? No,
yes.
back then.
Oh, back then, yeah. Well, no, I mean on the other side, on the U.S. side,
Mm.
you'd have things that were more de facto. The Red Scare and the blacklist. You don't. Some people just were shunned or ostracized without being on the original list. You know, you
Mm.
didn't have to be called up to the Senate or the House to give up your friends. A lot of people would give people up or not hire them, would, blackball them from jobs and stuff. And I think that's what's going to happen now, particularly. And they, of course, with the clamps on education, the attempts to cut funding and et cetera, that's going to have an effect on uh, college hiring, college entrance. Now they're trying to. There was a thing today on essentially identifying all international students in the United States and putting them under notice. Let's put it that way. And aside from scare tactics like DHS sending out things to people who were either in or were waiting for trials or doing other kinds of things relative to their asylum stuff, they sent out a scare letter that says you have a week to get the hell out of the country. And of course, I mean, how much of a population is going to freak out if you get a letter that says you have X number
Mm.
of days to get the hell out of the country?
Mm.
Um, it makes one who the people who are much more predisposed to paranoia that it's just trolling people, it's kind of insane. And then, of course, there's all the other side politics of it. Um, uh, uh, Governor Newsom in California didn't do himself any favors aside from his turning up on right wing podcasts to talk about this whole Kilmar Garcia thing as a distraction. It is a distraction, but it is still important because it's kind of basic in terms of whether the White House is going to be allowed to flaunt the law, in its absolute. It is getting kind of difficult. But today was a good day because a conservative, the fourth uh, Fourth Circuit, is a little more conservative. Now, if it happened in the Fifth Circuit, it would probably be really radical. But Fourth Circuit's, significant enough to be unanimous in their, stepping on the White House's attempt to stop Garcia from returning. Now, the reality of this whole thing is that they still might deport him legally, but the principle is the thing. That's making me very hungry, Joe.
There we are. Got
Yum. What
tempura,
leaves are those?
Yeah, these are fantastic. They're called perilla leaves
Hmm.
or shiso leaves in
Oh,
Japanese,
yes.
and
Yes.
I can't remember what they're called in Korea. Before we left Korea, we had these pickled
Mm.
in kind of just banchan side dish, and you there's in kind of a chili paste, fermented chili paste, and then you would place a piece of the meat or fish usually and wrap it up and eat it. I really don't know how to describe the flavor of it. It,
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've had them. It's not like celery.
it has celery aspects, it has basil, it
Yeah,
has
yeah, yeah.
some other almost numbing when it's fresh.
Hmm.
Oh, quite special. So I thought I'd garnish it with that. So it's burdock root and carrots seasoned with mirin and soy sauce. Super straightforward, healthy side dish for your rice. And
Yum,
um,
yum, yum, yum. We're getting close to the end, and Susanna, I think, is here, and maybe she can tell us what she's going to talk about at in place of. We are going to do night gallery, but then Prof. John has visitors, so we're doing something else. Susanna, are you there?
so many social engagements, so little time.
Well, thanks. So we're going to keep with our bizarre theme tonight. And I have yet another Wild Wild West episode from season one that I've never presented.
Cool.
And both the star and the director say it is very bizarre. So I hope you join me.
Excellent. Thank you very
Good.
much. Uh, yeah, we are coming to the end tonight. We thank you for watching us. Perhaps next week, although we can't plan that far ahead, we're having more food ASMR. Although it
Oh,
has been very interesting and
mhm.
challenging to see that. John will be back
Oh,
next week with Night Gallery, I assume. He will be here on Sunday with at 5 with Star Trek Next Generation. I have changed weekly marks to 2 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays to accommodate folks from around the world.
and
And
I have not corrected the schedule on that.
That's quite all right. And
Oopsie.
we will be, let's see, what else will we be doing? Well, we'll have more. It's getting closer and stranger. And as we have noticed, we were having a discussion before we came on that about the 19th and 20th of the month, this weekend, are kind of important. There are demonstrations, and then there's also this weird potential of some crazy person deciding that the Insurrection Act is appropriate at this particular moment in U.S. history. So things could get a little whack. Um, uh, so anyway, I think we're close to the end. We can set the outro up, I think, if James is set to go. Um,
Yeah, I can do that.
Let me just promise that we'll try and do better next week, even though stuff is changing. But hopefully, you'll see more food next week as well, because now I'm very, very hungry. At 8:30, we're going to have more stuff. So hang in there, folks.
Yeah. And hit it.